What's up, everybody? It's Wes, Hank, and Andy. Welcome to the first episode of our new Star Wars review series. It's Fandom Crew. Everybody needs their own crew.
Exactly.
Hey, you guys.
Hey, you guys. I'm excited for this one. I personally been looking forward to this. I think we, as collectively, as a team,
There was a lot of hope going into this one after the debacle of the last one.
yeah.
You know what? I kept my, and I don't normally do this, so I kept my shit in check, if you will. I worked really hard to not have any crazy expectations. Just by its nature,
Yeah.
I didn't have a ton of, it's nothing was advertised to me like we're going to screw up Jedi for you, or we're going to. I guess none of them advertised that per se, but I
No.
just had a good feeling about this one in terms of it felt enough disconnected from everything else that I thought it would be cool to just play around in that sandbox without any like
Empire.
Stakes. Yeah, no big stakes, just a fun ride. And then when you describe it to me like Goonies in space,
I mean, how many people got sucked in by that line alone? How many times have we said that just in the course of preparing for the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think after the first two episodes,
it kind of doesn't fail to deliver.
Okay, so that's perfect. That segues in perfectly because I did want to touch on the expectations on the lead up based on the marketing that we saw. Now that the first two episodes are out, are your expectations met? Like, is the reality of these first two episodes, does it live up to that Goonies in space sort of thing that we were sort of, I don't say we weren't promised, but that's sort of what we were offered?
So I'm getting it gives. Is that what the kids say?
Yeah.
It gives ET.
It's pretty wizard,
right? I'm getting ET from it. I'm getting Flight of the Navigator. I'm getting Goonies. I'm getting an 80s Spielberg vibe out of the whole thing, right? Like, there's when we get there, I'd like to talk about the dystopian level of whatever's going on, the Orwellian undertones of
there's something definitely going on there.
Yeah,
there's a mystery afoot,
and it's not readily evident in the first opening bit, but they start dropping clues.
I want to take a couple seconds here. I just want to check in and say hi to Sarah. Sarah says, I've been looking forward to your review of Skeleton Crew. Oh, Sarah, so have we. So looking forward to dipping into this. I feel now that I've seen the first two episodes, I have a similar feeling to what I had going into Andor. I was like really, really impressed with this. I didn't put a lot of expectations on the show, and I wanted to sort of come away from it feeling good. I mean, I think part of having, teenage protagonists, it allowed me to sort of see the show like it almost brought me back to that time in my life.
Fully.
And so, like, I don't feel like this show has the weight of the last few shows where everything is super serious.
No,
I'm sure there are going to be serious moments in this one.
Having said that part, the cold open for me was way more than I expected in terms of like, so you're marketing a big kids Disney show and then that.
yeah, it's true.
Leading with pirates.
On the note, we've all seen the first two episodes. Presumably everybody who's watching tonight, you've all seen the first two episodes. So let's flip the script a little bit. And I want to get this out of the way right now, so that we can come back on and modify things as the series unfolds. There's a mystery afoot, and I want to go around the room. What's everybody's theory before we start the breakdown? What do you guys think?
Oh, I don't know if I can. I came across a really cool theory, but it's got something to do with the character that pops up in the second episode. So I don't know if you want to get into it now.
I was thinking about more. Let's talk about the larger mystery about At-Atten and what At-Atten represents.
You mean AT-ATN? That's my Star Wars for the week.
There we go.
We've been chewing on this a little bit. um, I think that they never refer to it. They refer to the Republic. I have
That's right.
I have a feeling that whatever's going on there has been going on uh, since before the Empire fell, and I have a feeling, and I don't know, like because you'd mentioned subspace communications and stuff, but no ships.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just get a feeling that their society that does not know that the Empire fell. I just, you know, I don't mean old Republic, but
Yeah, yeah.
because the director came out and clarified that because he had said this was the jewel of the old Republic. But what he meant was old Republic the same way Kenobi used it to Luke, which
Yeah,
would
so when we say Old Republic, we're talking like prequel era?
yeah, we're
Pre-Clone
talking
Wars.
prequel era.
Okay.
We're talking, and
Okay.
so and then you look at some of the tech that they have.
Yeah.
They ground it a little bit. They dial it back a little bit from like even A New Hope, like
Yeah.
the cars are on electric
Cars are on
tracks,
rails.
right?
Yeah.
Things of
Yeah.
that nature. The droids have a very some of those episodes of the Clone Wars showed you utility droids from around the galaxy, and that very much the droids on that planet feel like. So that's my guess is, and I'm more akin to the financial angle too now that I've kind of
Yeah, yeah.
listened to the language a bit. But my guess is that they're a planet that was either integral to or detrimental to one side or the other, probably detrimental or to the separatists and integral to the Republic, and have been cordoned off. And I think that they're like this, like a I don't know what the word is, but that they don't know that the rest of the galaxy has moved on from this.
Yeah.
And when we get to it, there's a thing that I find weird because these kids are like they're learning some stuff that I don't think the three of us could learn. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, I know. Like they're having like, and I made a point of that, saying that in my notes. We go to, by the way, it's a middle school. It says middle school right on the building.
Yeah.
But we get there, and the first lesson they're getting sounds like a university level economics lecture. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
and I'm like, I needed to look up some of the terms to like, is this like really Star Warsian, or is this where we relate back to?
Keep that in mind and remind me if I forget it for when they jump to hyperspace.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay.
We'll do that. Andy, you got a theory?
Yeah, I believe, like you guys have said, it is a financial thing.
Yeah.
From pre-Clone Wars, like they were cordoned off because of everything going on. Like, you protect your bank.
Yeah.
And basically communication stopped, but they kept speeding on forward, right?
Yeah.
Like, just keep rolling with the work they were doing.
And that's part of the mystery. So I like that because I get behind that as well. I got two. I do support the idea that perhaps at some point at Atten, based on all the financial stuff like that the kids are doing, and that it looks like everybody on the planet is funneled into a career in finance.
Yeah.
Potentially, like, was at Atten the seat of Republic banking, and the barrier was put up to protect them from things like piracy.
Mm-hmm.
What does that say about like the banking clan and things of that nature?
Kind of. I don't know. Like,
sort of know how it works.
But does the banking clan spin out of this idea that, a singular world proved to be non-effective?
Well, no, I mean, absolutely. Because what we do is we think of the financial hubs in the galaxy, like Chandrilla, Coruscant,
yeah,
that nature.
That's
I mean, would it be how?
That's an issue that I
add
have.
to the corruption of the Jedi a little, or the hubris.
Oh, maybe
a secret money stash belonging to the Republic.
I have an issue with that theory. I like that theory, but I have a small issue with it in the sense that I don't understand why you would separate the seat of galactic banking so far away from the seat of government. I feel like those two things would be physically located close together.
But you know what? If you can't see it, it could be next door.
That's true. That's true. This is the one episode where I really had wished that and it's been a long time. We haven't had to translate any language since the Bad Batch. And I got to admit, I was very rusty. But after getting through the first episode, I really wished, like, this is the one time where, like, it would have paid dividends to this conversation had we, or were we, more fluent in Aurebesh. Because after you translate the stuff and you go back and realize that there's some clues in the language this week that that point to some of those things. Like everything serves one purpose on AT-AT. And like when we go through the downtown, and I'll get to it in our notes, but in the downtown, it's not like Bob's store or a grocery store. It's things like comm center, administration, and everything is all sort of working towards a common purpose.
Yeah. The great work.
The great work. Now and I'm going to bring that up, the great work or the great works, plural. Anyway, I want to get into the breakdown, but anything you guys want to say before we get to it?
I want to see more of AT-AT.
More of AT-AT in the
Because,
planet.
like, yes, we've seen the residential piece and the schooling piece.
Yeah.
But if they are involved in, like, mining credit or mining whatever you need to make credits.
Oh,
because
okay.
They say,
yeah.
like they
Precious
drop
metals
that
or
line,
something or whatever.
If you don't do this, you'll get working in the mines. Right?
So that,
I mean, she says it as a joke, but
it does beg the question, how serious is she? Yeah, no, I get it.
And being who her mother is, maybe she has more knowledge than he does.
Andy, you want to see more of AT-AT, and we've Adam at Go Figure says, I want to see a Cloud City show next.
Yes.
I'd be down for that. Come on, Lando. Where's the Lando show?
It'd be like Dallas, like
Right.
Tabana gas mine stuff.
Or how about sorry, let me put that up again. How about a show like Baby's Day Out, but it's Wicket on Coruscant?
I do want to see an off-world Ewok real bad, actually.
Nah, me too.
For
Me
real.
too.
I mean, we kind of got one in Rebuild the Galaxy, but
that's true. But Rebuild the Galaxy sits in that place where it's
Elseworlds Tales.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things we do here on the show that we like to do, and we've been doing it for quite a while now, is we have our bad Star Wars jokes. However, I thought it would be more fun, seeing as and I think we did this with Ewoks. Every joke that we delivered on Tales from the Moon of Fandor was Ewok centric. So I feel it is only fitting that going forward for Fandom Crew, we're going to give you some bad Star Wars pirate jokes.
That's a great cut.
Nice.
Listen, guys, a Rhodian pirate with a peg leg, a hook hand, and an eye patch walks into the spaceport cantina. The bartender says to him, "Hey, man, how did you lose your leg?" And the Rhodian says, I was chewed off by a rancor. And then the bartender says, "Oh, yeah? What about the hand?" It was blown off in a firefight." And finally, the bartender says, "What? How did you lose your eye?" And the Rhodian says, a porg shit in me eye. Confused, the bartender says, "There's no way that a porg shitting in your eye would cause you to lose it." And the Rhodian says, "I know, but it was the first day with me hook hand."
Aww.
And that is a bad Star Wars pirate joke.
Oh,
There you go.
awesome. Well done.
Nice.
All right, let's get into the breakdown. A couple things I want to do. We got some really nice imagery this week at the premiere. Whole thing going on at Galaxy's Edge over at the theme park, and so we got a lot of photos. This is a good way for us to get some of this stuff out of the way all at once. Let's go through our main cast here. This is the main cast at Galaxy's Edge in front of the Millennium Falcon. From left to right, we've got Timothy Smith. He is playing our blue elephantine. I think he might be the standout of the show, by the way. Neil. Now, Robert has 8 acting credits to his name. He made his debut back in 2017 as the ring bearer in Tosh.0. However, 2024 has proven to be his busiest year with appearances in the Prime Video movie Wolves. That's the one with the two Brad Pitt and George Clooney, where they play essentially mob cleaners.
I haven't seen that one yet.
We've got, he was in Dear Santa with Jack Black, and of course, here in Skeleton Crew.
Nice.
Next to Robert, we have Mariana Crater. Now, she's our KB. She has 11 acting credits. She first appeared in a 2018 short film called Safe. She also appeared in 5 episodes of the Disney series Bunked as Nadine, as well as 1 episode of the CBS television series The United States of AI. Of course, we've got Jude Law as Jode, or Pirate Captain Silvo, if you prefer.
Maybe. Maybe.
Jude's got 82 acting credits with memorable appearances in films like The Talented Mr. Ripley, Enemy at the Gates, Road to Perdition, Sherlock Holmes, the Fantastic Beasts franchise, and Peter Pan and Wendy, just to name a few.
Never heard of him.
Never ever.
Oh, don't forget Captain Marvel.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of
I
memorable.
was trying.
And was he not opposite Holly Joel Osment in AI Artificial Intelligence?
Wasn't that Robin Williams?
Kevin Spacey.
Oh, Kevin Spacey. You're right. Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't want to get them confused.
Yeah.
Okay, next to
Not in a
Jude.
dark alley.
Next to Jude, we've got Ravi Cobbett Conyers. That's Wim, who the show, at least this first episode, is very much through his eyes. He has 16 acting credits, making his debut in an uncredited role on an episode of Saturday Night Live back in 2016. He's gone on to appear in various film and television productions like Ode to Joy and Encanto.
Ooh.
And then lastly, we've got Ryan Kira Armstrong. That's Fern. She's sort of our hot rodder. I don't want to call her a bully, but she's trying to play a tough character.
Yes.
Ryan has 20 acting credits across film and television with standout roles in Anne with an E, where she played Minnie Mae Barry for 16 episodes. She was in the Black Widow movie as the young Antonia, and she appeared in 6 episodes of American Horror Story as Alma Gardner, as well as the 2022 remake of Stephen King's Firestarter as Charlie McGee, the character made famous by Drew Barrymore.
Nice.
So that is our main cast. There are some other names that are going to come up as we go through the episode, and I'll talk about those when we get to them. But along with this photo, we also got a really cool photo of most of the production crew, but we're missing 2 directors, so I had to add those in. But let's just go left to right. We've got Lucasfilm Chief Creative Officer and Skeleton Crew Executive Producer Dave Filoni, Skeleton Crew Executive Producer Jon Favreau, Executive Producer Kathleen Kennedy, series co-creator, writer, and director John Watts, who you should know as the director of the Spider-Man trilogy for the MCU. We have actress and director Bryce Dallas Howard, who has already had a hand at Star Wars with The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett. And I believe we liked her episodes very much.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to hers.
Yeah, me as well. Then we've got Lee Isaac Chung. He did Twisters most recently. But he also did an episode of The Mandalorian, The Convert. That's the one where Bo-Katan starts to sort of see herself through the eyes of the Mandalorian covert when she starts chucking around This Is the Way. So that was a cool one. Then next to him, we've got our series co-creator and writer Christopher Ford, who wrote Spider-Man Homecoming. And the next gentleman, that's Chris Bongiorno. Now, he's a co-executive producer on the show, but he was the associate producer on Spider-Man Far From Home, and he was the co-producer on Spider-Man No Way Home. So we got a lot of spider people in this. Next to him is David Lowery. He's another one of our directors. He did the live-action Pete's Dragon, The Green Knight, as well as Peter Pan and Wendy. And lastly, on the bottom, we've got Daniel Scheinert and Daniel Kwan, collectively known as the Daniels. And you would probably recognize them for their work as the directors on Swiss Army Man, as well as more recently, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Best movie ever.
That is your production crew. That is all of the directors, by the way, for all 8 episodes. All right, let's get into the breakdown itself. It is a Skeleton Crew. This is episode 1. It's called This Could Be a Real Adventure. It's written by Christopher Ford and John Watts. It's directed by John Watts. That's the first, I think, of 2 episodes for John. This originally aired on Tuesday, December 2nd, 2024. And we have an advertised runtime of 49 minutes or an actual runtime of 41 minutes and 54 seconds without titles or credits. And that's pretty consistent with all of the live action stuff we've seen so far, with about 7 minutes of credits. Our synopsis this week reads, Kids from an ordinary planet discover a surprising secret. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Ordinary planet.
Ordinary. Yeah. Big swirling green
barrier in the
barrier
sky.
thing. Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
star?
Dude, that was my point exactly.
The kids have never seen stars. Yeah.
Or even know what one is.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of stars, every episode, every Star Wars, we get the revolving heads, and I like to think of them as stars of the show. I didn't go through all of them, but I want to point out these are the new ones. And I'm not maybe Anakin is not new. I don't recall him before, but we get an RX pilot droid this time around. We get young Anakin Skywalker. We also get Pirate Captain Silvo, as well as one of the safety droids. And lastly, but not least, we got SM-33, which I think is hilarious because they named the droid Smee. All right. This is interesting. We get it's not a crawl per se, but we do get some opening text with a downward panning shot that reminds us that this is Star Wars, and that is how the classic or all of the movies in the Skywalker saga have opened. All right. So the context of this lets us know that we are beyond sort of that Return of the Jedi era. It says, since the fall of the Empire, the New Republic has maintained order. And yet remote hyperspace routes are increasingly plagued by piracy. These pirates boldly brand their armored hulls as a sign to all ships, surrender or die. All right, so the episode opens with a pirate boarding action against a civilian bulk freighter. And you can see with the two ships here together that the pirate ship is enormous.
Huge.
If that's a bulk freighter, which to me looks roughly the size of a CR-90 Corvette, like the Tantive 4, that thing's huge. The pirate ship is enormous, dwarfing the bulk freighter several times over. Now, the pirates board the ship using 4 large drills that pierce the hull, but the drills also serve as gangways that allow the invaders to storm the smaller ship.
I feel like we saw that on Separatist ships in the Clone Wars animated series.
So I went through, when we did the Mandalorian episode, the Gorian Shard one, I was like, whoa, wait a second. And we did, I couldn't help but notice the paint scheme on Gorian Shard's ship was that blue striping that looked very Confederacy-like.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's kind of thematically here. I guess we're supposed to just accept that pirates use a similar paint scheme.
Maybe.
So you don't have a class or type for this ship?
I got nothing for this right
cool.
now.
That's very cool to me.
Yeah, that we've got nothing. It's completely new.
Because they want to fly the colors, right?
I did go back and look at some of the other episodes where, because I thought, oh, maybe the bulk freighter is similar to some of those, like the civilian transports that we saw in The Mandalorian, but no, they are not. This is a new ship. Both of these are new ships.
One thing to point out, though, they're not in hyperspace right now.
No, they are not.
And, they say the hyperspace lanes are plagued, but is there a possibility we're going to see this play out again in hyperspace?
Well, typically the pirates wouldn't do a boarding in hyperspace, but they would sort of camp next to it's like parking your car next to the highway, right?
Gotcha.
Right.
That's the idea. It's like, here's a spot where ships are known to frequently come out of hyperspace to change navigational coordinates and then go again. Well, we just jump them when they come out.
It's a pretty Tatooine-looking planet to me, too, that they kind of drift by.
Yeah, and I was kind of expecting that they were going to put put some text up to identify the planet, and they didn't. So part of me is like, is that what At-Aten looks like from really far away?
Turns out that green sky is just a big projector screen.
Well, I don't know. Is it?
Maybe.
The pirates board the ship using 4 large drills. And they are a mixture of Star Wars species, including humans, Klatooinians, Aqualish, Quarren, Snevian, Trandoshan, Nikto, Ishi Tib, Gran, and what I think is the coolest of them all, a Shistavenin Wolfman. God, I love that.
How's that for diversity?
That's great.
All species working together with a common goal.
That's true. After a protracted firefight, the civilian crew is overwhelmed and the survivors are rounded up for the pirate captain Silvo. His first mate, Brutus, the Shistavenin Wolfman, declares the ship his before the captain strides in and demands one of the survivors take them to the ship's vault. The crewman meekly says there is no credit shipment on board, But Silvo asks him, then why is your vault magnetically sealed? The crewman says they are under New Republic protection, and he orders all pirate scum off of the ship. Everybody laughs at him, and Silvo orders that he gets tossed out the airlock and the vault to be cut open. And that really says a lot about Silvo. That, oh wow, he's pretty ruthless.
But at the same time, that's kind of a weird question to ask. Like, why is your vault magnetically sealed? Because that's how they built it.
Because
we ordered the magnetic seal.
It's got to be magnetically sealed before we can jump to hyperspace.
This is like through and through. This whole opening scene is an alternate edit of the opening scene from A New Hope. Like from the sort of the tension as the troops are hunking down to defend. The way they even glance back at each other over their shoulders. The way that although it's an airlock that opens up, it's essentially a blast door that opens up, and the troops come pouring out. Even to the line, if this is a consular ship, then where's the ambassador?
Where's the ambassador?
So, those kinds of things, without being too on the nose, and they're pretty on the nose, have me super hooked right now. Also, I had no idea it was going to be this violent. It's crazy violent to start.
That whole opening is just like, not
in a great way.
That.
Like fun violence. Like,
one of the things that I appreciated,
just killing stuntmen.
Pirate violence.
I really appreciated in this opening sequence that not only did they use the gangways to board, but like I think of like all the cool pirate movies we've seen growing up as kids and into adulthood. There's always this like prepare to be boarded, and then the pirates swing across using ropes.
Yeah, like these guys are in spacesuits, kind of.
Yeah. When the guys came over to take out that cannon, I thought, oh, that's a real nice nod to those old pirate movies. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so using some kind of plasma cutter, one of the Nikto pirates begins to cut through the vault door. At the same time, Captain Silvo begins to address the crew, and he notes that things have been pretty lean for them lately. But he knows that some of them have all but given up on him. But he says that's all forgotten now because he's brought them to the only thing that matters, and that's cold, hard credits.
Plural.
Kicking in the cutout section of the vault door, the pirates stand there looking inside at an empty vault. Brutus, quite like assertively, shoves his way past Silvo to get inside the vault, where he finds a single New Republic credit laying on the floor. Holding the credit in his outstretched hand, Brutus snarls at Silvo. Good men's lives were lost for a single measly credit. The other pirates immediately draw blasters on Silvo, and it is a mutiny. They swarm Silvo, and although he tries his best to fend them off, he is overwhelmed. And as the camera pushes in on Brutus and his intense red eyes, we fade to black. What's Sarah saying? Sarah says, it took me a while to realize that Captain Silvo's helmet was the shape of the tricorn classic pirate hat. Nice touch. As a matter of fact.
Yeah, when they dropped that image, when the second trailer released, I was like, oh, can that be Hondo? Please be Hondo.
Yeah, I know.
Why isn't it Hondo? who is Jude Law, and why isn't it Hondo?
I know.
Hondo's going to show at some point.
Do you think so?
You can't have a pirate show without Hondo.
I wanted him in The Mandalorian. So,
and I mean, so this is something that Lauren and I talked about because he's quite old. I mean, he's the voice of Winnie the Pooh, I think, too. And he's a larger fella. He's older, So, but with the precedent of the very first main character, ostensibly in Star Wars, Darth Vader, being a character. Playing a dude being played by another dude. There's a precedent there that you could slap somebody in a prosthetic or even have some CGI and have him voice the character while he's still with us, because
it's exactly what they did with
Cad Bane. You guys out there are interested in Star Wars piracy but have never wait a minute, should I word that differently? Star Wars pirate content.
yeah, that's it.
But are not familiar with Hondo Inaka. Go get educated, because one of the best new characters that they've created since the original
original character for animation. Fantastic. Josh wants to say, wasn't Nikto one of the words from the day the Earth stood still to get the robot to help? Yeah, it was.
All
And
three
so
of
is
those
Klaatu.
species. Yeah.
Yeah, Nikto, Klaatu.
And there's another one too.
No, the dog face guys.
Yep.
Yep, them.
Oh, that's awful.
No, you're right. Okay, let's move on, shall we? Yes. And so the Skeleton Crew logo fades in, and it bears a metallic sheen before flaring to all white and then fading out again. And I find it really interesting that this does not resemble the logo that was used on the lead up throughout all the marketing.
There's been a few variations of it.
Of the logo.
Even in the posters that have been released on the media kit, there's variation between them.
Yeah, absolutely there is. It makes me wonder, will we see an evolution of the logo as the series progresses to this, the tarnished, the rusty metal thing that we've got on the top right. I love that logo, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, Baramba. Oh, Barada. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's the ones. Okay. So, I just want to point out here some returning people. Now, part of the pirate crew, I feel we should talk about them. Vane makes a return. Vane, of course, appeared in the Mandalorian as one of Gorian Shard's pirates. I think he played the first mate, to be honest.
Yeah, he was a deserter at the end.
He did desert. Now, Vane is played by Marty Matulis, and he played on 33 episodes of Evil, where he played the manager demon as well as the therapist demon. Awesome. Brutus, on the other hand, Brutus is cool. He is a amalgamation of a couple of people here. He's performance-wise, that is, where is it here? Stephen Young. Now, Stephen Young played Mike in Twisters, and he played Doc Strassi, the Trandoshan crime boss in the Book of Boba Fett. But he's voiced by veteran animation actor Fred Tatasciore.
There's my point. Illustrated.
Yeah. Who you can see most recently as Lieutenant Shax on Star Trek Lower Decks. Mm-hmm. So he's in both Star franchises. One of the things that I also saw that I had to point out, get this out of the way, when Silvo boards. Whoop, going too far. Go back. There we go. When Silvo's boarding, you can see a couple of people hanging out just behind him on the left. That's Jaleel White, Steve Urkel from Family Matters, and he's playing a pirate character called Gunter, although he has no dialogue in this episode. Mm-hmm. And on the right, we've got Dale Soules, who plays a character named, and forgive me if I screw this up, Chalt?
Yeah.
Anyway, she played Frida on Orange is the New Black, and she is fantastic. Love her. Here we go. So now, oh yeah, and then the tricorn hat. Absolutely. Looking at that helmet now, I totally see it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so fading in, we see Wim, our young protagonist, playing with a pair of action figures on his bed. The descriptive audio in the segment tells us that they are a Jedi and a Sith. Speaking of descriptive audio, did you guys watch it with audio or without?
I've watched it without so far.
You've watched without.
I haven't seen the descriptive audio. I've seen the subtitles, but not
descriptive audio. Is the same gentleman that narrated Andor, so that's kind of familiar, and I thought it was well done. It's not the first time we've seen action figures in Star Wars. Certainly, Cyril Karn had Clone War era clone troopers in his bedroom, but unlike Cyril's action figures, Wim's have no articulation and they look homemade.
Yeah,
almost like the scaling on them is like 3 3/4 action figure, but the detailing on them reminds me of like Tin Soldier.
Absolutely. I was going to say it's like 1940s Earth tech.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Josh says it's good to see Jaleel White again. Follow up with the helmet looks like a Cobra Viper helmet with a bedpan on top to me. Brogu over on YouTube. I really enjoyed the Skeleton Crew. So did we.
Welcome aboard, Brogu.
It's been really good so far. Looking forward to the next 6 weeks. 6 weeks? 7 weeks. 7 weeks as we get the remaining 6 episodes. Mm-hmm. No, 6 weeks. 7. My God, I don't know how to do math.
Weeks of episodes.
That's right. From another room in the house, Wim's father, his name is Wendell, calls for him, saying he's going to be late for school. And then grabbing his jacket, Wim heads out into the kitchen and pours himself a bowl of cereal before dousing it in gray milk. Not blue milk.
I think that's the chocolate version
Gray
of,
milk.
of blue milk, because
Could be.
I don't know.
his cereal is also grayish, but I thought they look like chocolate Cocoa Puffs.
When I was going to say it definitely looked like a chocolate cereal to me. So Ravi Cabot Conyers, when asked about this milk, what do you think about the gray milk? He said it tastes gray.
Ew, gross.
Well, meanwhile, Wendell fumbles around the room, gathering his things so he can get to work. That's a common theme for this character, by the way. Work, work, work. He's annoyed because he can't find his pass card, and he asks if Wim was playing with it. Then he chides Wim, telling him, "Don't leave your toys all over the house. I keep stepping on them." Wendell tosses a stack of credits onto the table as he tells Wim that he's going to be late all week. He says there's a repair droid coming by to look at the garage later, and then, tired of talking to the back of Wim's head, he asks if the boy is hearing any of this. Wim spins on his chair, answering, "I didn't play with your pass card." Now, with his son's full attention, Wendell says that he has a supervisor's review, so he won't be around much. And then, pointing to the loose pile of credits, he says, "That's your lunch money for the whole week." Finding the pass card in his jacket pocket, Wendell tells Wim not to be late for school and then heads off for work. While Wim turns back to his cereal, and then picking up what looks like a homemade toy starship, Wim spins on his stool as he pretends to fly it around.
A little bit Goonies-esque, where like the adult tells the kid something before rushing off at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Brogu says, "In my humble opinion, I think Disney should not have tagged it as a Star Wars show. They should have promoted this as a fun, entertaining Disney show. It's more like Space Goonies than Star Wars." See, I actually think that it's fine. I think that Star Wars, there's just so many facets to the Star Wars galaxy that we haven't seen. Like, this is no more or no less Star Wars to me than anything else.
Well, you look at Andor, it's more in the spy espionage.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mandalorian kind of falls in your Western theme.
Nope, you're right.
There's room for all.
I don't know that. I mean, it certainly gets some traction as a show that's sci-fi based and kids based, but the Star Wars bump, like we all sat through the Acolyte, for God's sakes.
It's so true. It is so true. Okay, so let's talk about Wendell for a minute. Now, I hope I don't say this incorrectly. Wendell is played by Tunde Arabimpe.
Oh, cool.
Now, he played Dexter in Twisters, and he played Mr. Cobwell in Spider-Man Homecoming, but he is also the lead singer for the band TV on the Radio. Now, he was also an animator, and he actually worked on 24 episodes of MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch.
Cool.
What an interesting career.
Mm-hmm. All over the place.
With the toy ship in hand, Wim dashes out the door, rushing past a service droid that happens to be mowing the lawn, and right past an Ithorian woman named Mrs. Ick, who happens to be walking her pet frog dog. It's Star Wars Suburbia, and everything looks neat and orderly. Maybe a little too orderly, as we see all the streets are lined with rails, and the lone speeder car that we see trundle by floats over top of the rail, suggesting that things here on At-Atten might be a little different than they are in other parts of the galaxy.
Not exactly rush hour traffic, you know.
No.
I kind of laughed at the lawnmower droid, because
we could have just made the lawnmower a droid.
I know, like, your neighbor has one, and I've seen it when I go to pick my kids up from school. It's like, oh look, there's the robot,
the robo
lawn
mower
again.
But we've got an actual droid mowing the lawn.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of cute, but that's one thing that this series does, is it really, really leans into and this is where it gets kind of like, it's almost Asimov like, with the amount of droids and the roles that droids have in this show.
Droids.
Yes.
Well, it's
Bus
funny
driver
too, because
droids.
if this is a planet from the time, well, you know, during the Clone Wars, certainly you wouldn't have had all these droids.
Absolutely not. Not if you were a Republic world.
So it tells me it's like, you know, pre-Phantom Menace era sort of in that range.
We're
at
going to get
least.
some clues here. I think we're a lot old. Sorry.
I do too.
We are in
I
the
do
era
too.
of The Mandalorian, but I do think that the planet's origins are much, much older than that.
I'm getting High Republic vibes.
I am as well, and there's going to be some clues coming that are going to suggest that. We'll talk about them when we hit them. So arriving at the bus stop, Wim, he stops at the sight of a blue-skinned elephantine boy. That's Neil, who's standing with his back to him. Neil slowly turns and he says, "You should not have come here." Wim holds his toy ship out like a lightsaber, and the boys act out a mock lightsaber duel.
Did I do that? Sorry.
What did you do?
I was trying to get rid of the comment, and I made it big.
Oh, that's fine.
Is it just on my screen?
It's only on your screen.
Okay, good. Sorry. Technical error. I was trying to just get rid of the comment.
I'm sorry. Did I leave one up there?
That's
I
okay.
apologize for that. Now, there's some other kids that are standing at the bus stop and they watch bewildered. And one of the girls is like, "What are you guys doing?" Maybe a little embarrassed at being caught. The boys get to their feet and then everybody runs to board the school tram as it rolls up on the track.
One of my favorite things about that scene is they weren't making lightsaber sounds.
Oh, they started to.
But
at the beginning, they did the.
But they were making alternate lightsaber sounds.
I guess so.
They were making, not like if you've never heard a lightsaber before, like we've all heard one. So the sounds
That's true.
we made,
That's true. Right.
They were just using random sounds, which I thought was really cool.
I just thought it was so typical. Like that was one of those moments where it was like, oh, I'm 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 10 years old again. We'll talk about Mrs. Ick's frog dog here. And frog dogs have a long history in Star Wars. They first appeared in Return of the Jedi and Jabba's court. But Mrs. Ick's frog dog is different for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's way, way, way smaller.
It's a teacup frog dog.
And it has 4 limbs instead of 2. The one in Jabba's palace only has 2 limbs and a very long tail. So I could not find anything to say that they are
same species,
subspecies of the same, but presumably that they're related somehow.
If they're like, all of the frog dog family, right? Look how diverse the canine population is, right?
So that's a great point. The one thing that makes it a little bit more like, is that canonically, the large 2-limbed version of the frog dog, contrary to popular belief, is not a dumb animal. It is a sentient species, and Jabba uses it to spy.
Right.
Like it's sentient.
Trainable.
I mean, it's easy that they could be a different species. If Neil's not a size Snoodles relative, then
Oh yeah.
Right. There's a lot.
Brogu says, "This is a sad time for me. Neil's going to be the new cute alien, and no one will pay attention to my cute face anymore. I hate Neil." Just kidding, guys.
It's funny.
We won't forget Grogu. Are you kidding me?
When we get to episode 2, I think Neil's going to have some competition.
In episode 2?
Yeah. The little tram operator.
Oh, right. Yeah, that
pretty
thing is nuts.
Yeah. That's for next time, though.
Mrs. Ick's frog dog, by the way, is on a leash and does exhibit very, very dog-like pet behaviors. So, yeah, I mean, they look similar, but I'm wondering if these are 2 different species altogether.
Could be. But again, that just chalked that up to, a law-abiding civilization here. Like, oh, there's leash laws. You got to clean up after your frog dog.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. On the bus ride to school, one of the students harasses the RX pilot droid by sticking some gum to the back of its head. And it's not the first time this has happened. When the droid spins its head around, you can see like it's plastered in gum. Well, then the camera pushes through the bus all the way to the back, and we pass through students at all manner of species as they sit in their seats making idle chatter. We focus on Neil and Wim sitting at the back of the bus, and Neil is like super excited as he tells his friend about how he solved the math homework problem. But Wim is distracted as he flips through a holopad, which depicts a dueling Jedi. Descriptive audio refers to this as a story pad. I guess as opposed to a data pad, this is a story pad. Looking out the window, Wim is surprised to see 2 young girls on a hoverbike overtake the bus before turning onto a short dead-end street where they jump over a barrier and ride off into a forest. The descriptive audio makes a point to call it a hover bike. And I guess that's how we're differentiating these, what I assume lower powered versions are from true speeder
Speeder
bikes.
Right.
Yeah. Plus the tassels on the handlebars
Oh
kind
yeah.
of scream bicycle. Wim snaps his head to Neil. Did you see that? Neil answers, see what? And he launches back into the math discussion while Wim stares out the tram's rear window as it enters a dedicated underpass. And here we get this really cool shot of suburbia where we can see like a dozen or so cars, all on rails. And I feel like this is really interesting because it does look kind of like suburbia where like all the houses are kind of similar. And as far as speeders go in Star Wars, I have never seen speeders look more like Earth cars
Oh yeah.
than they do in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It looks like, Santa Monica.
Yeah. But at the same time, I do feel that this shot does help to connect the show to those 1980s kid adventure movies that sort of inspired it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's pretty telling about the world itself that it is different from other Star Wars worlds that we've seen from this time period. And this, I think, is our first clue that something is out of place.
Mm.
Oh, suburbia in general, I guess. And I say that knowing, like, look how far the production design team went to differentiate the prequel trilogy from the original trilogy. Like, they tried to give it its own look, and so they drastically changed things.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's sort of what's going on here as well. All right, for the first of what I think two or three times in this episode, we got to talk about Wim's story pad because turns out he's actually reading a story. I actually thought my first watch through, again, this is why I'm like, God, I wish my Aurebesh was like I was much better at it, so I could have read it in real time. But it just moves so fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know what this reminded me of? Just before you get into what's
no, go
on
for it. Go for
it.
it.
It reminded me of a Viewmaster.
Oh, kind of
like a modern day.
Like
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I had so many discs.
I have to be honest. At this point in the episode, on like the first watch through, like when it came out, I actually thought that he was looking at like reference material, that these were historical references, not a children's storybook.
Right.
Changes how I feel or how I think about the episode, knowing that, oh, this is fiction. All right, Wim Storypad, page 1. The Cave of Shadows was dark and ominous. Lena was not afraid. She ignited her lightsaber, its blue glow lighting up the darkness, ready for what lay ahead. And then as we flip the page, it says, suddenly the Sith approached. Before her in dark robes and a red lightsaber. You should not have come here, he hissed, his voice echoing through the cave. Now, here's where we get another one of those clues. I said there was going to be clues that suggest the time period of this. Although there is no reference that I could find for a Jedi named Lena, it is important to point out that exactly the same spelling, but one of the Supreme Chancellors of the Republic during the High Republic era is Lena So. And that is the same spelling.
Yes.
All right. So, Supreme Chancellor of the Republic during High Republic era that undertook several projects that were collectively referred to as the Great Works.
And there we have it.
But more on that later.
Gaz.
What's Gaz saying? Oh, I bet that hover bike was a Space Mongoose GT. That's cool. I like that.
Josh too.
Space Vespa. You know what's funny? I talked about that. Not tonight, obviously, but we talked about that, the three of us, about like, are these like the scooter gang from Book of Boba Fett? I think the bikes, I think these are even lower powered.
Yeah, these are like BMX vibes. Like a BMX vibe.
Yeah.
Just like you say, it's like a mongoose.
Cut to the tram car re-emerging from the underground, and it speeds past a terminal as it joins with other speeder traffic moving through the urbanized streets lined with concrete buildings on either side. Now, other buildings on the street, in no particular order, they are marked as Terminal, Administration, and Comm Center. And all the buildings are numbered in English, and they use the same odd-even numbering convention between one and the opposite side of the street. Eventually, the tram pulls up in front of the At-Atten Middle School, where the kids are met by safety droids ushering them to class, warning that truancy will result in detention. And walking towards the school, Wim notices one of the safety droids is lecturing the two girls that he saw earlier on the speeder bike, the hover bike. Later on, in the class, a droid instructor gives a lecture that sounds more like a university-level economics class than a middle school math class.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about how the barrier inside the barrier on At-Atten, they take into account the fungibility of multiple currencies, as opposed to planets outside the barrier that use liquidity modeling. And another clue as to the nature of At-Atten and why they might be sheltered.
I get L337 vibes off the droid's model looking.
A little bit. And then the droid also reminds me of the housekeeper droid that we're going to see later, who I'm calling Rosie, just because of her colors, the blue and the white. While most of the class is focused on the lecture, Wim doodles a Jedi at his desk, and it's like a giant Etch-a-Sketch, which I think is kind of neat.
That is awesome.
An adult human female walks past him and clears her throat to get his attention, and Wim quickly turns off the display and begins to pay attention to the lecture. The woman is announced as a special guest from the office of the supervisor. That's the second time we've heard that term, by the way. She introduces herself as Undersecretary Farah, and she's come to talk to the class about tomorrow's career assessment test. Farah says that the results of the test will set the course for the students' entire lives. And once they are assigned a career path, they will become part of what she calls At-Atten's contribution to the great work, singular, keeping the Republic peaceful and strong. The droid instructor interjects, beckoning the students to tell the undersecretary how they would like to contribute to the great work. Several eager students raise their hands, and the droid picks a young Vazuan girl named Runa. Vazuan, by the way, that's a new species making its first appearance here in this series. Runa says she wants to be a senior statistical accountant, and infatuated by this, Neil leans on his arm as he just stares at her longingly. So, statistical accountants, by the way, here's another clue. Statistical accountants specialize in data analytics using statistical analysis to analyze financial data.
Trying to predict
It's a real
the future.
thing. Farah points to an Ithorian student who tells her that she wants to be an analyst, but another boy seated next to her blurts out, "That's no fair! I want to be an analyst!" Farah tells him, "Oh, not to worry, because we need all the analysts we can get." Spotting Wim trying to shrink into his seat, Farah snaps her fingers and she points straight at him. "You." Wim points out, "Well, my father is a systems coordinator, but I'd rather help people like when there's danger." The instructor droid cuts him off and says, "That's not a career," adding, "That's what safety droids are for." Farah concludes her visit by telling the class to study hard and get lots of rest, and she reminds them that they all have a place in the great work. Dun dun dun. Okay, Undersecretary Farah. Now that's Irish actress Kerry Condon, who you might recognize. Certainly, maybe not her face, but you'd recognize her voice. She's the voice of Friday in the MCU.
Oh, cool.
She was also Stacey Ehrmantraut on Better Call Saul, and I remember her as Octavia in the HBO miniseries Rome.
Nice.
Now, let's talk about this. The Great Works versus the Great Work, and tie it all together. Here's Supreme Chancellor Lena So. That is the same spelling as our Jedi character that Wim is reading about. Now, the Great Works. Among the Great Works were included what do we got here? Starlight Beacon, a massive space station on the frontier of the galaxy. We also have the Republic Fair, kind of like the World's Fair, but on a galactic level. There was also a construction project to construct communications relays around the galaxy, negotiating a treaty between the Quarren and the Mon Calamari, and cracking the code on Bacta cultivation, as well as other technological innovations. So, now that we have some of those things out of the way, do we think that At-Atten has been shrouded in secrecy since the High Republic?
That's kind of where I was headed to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So here's a planet. What we're saying is, here's a planet that has been cut off from the galaxy at large for like a couple hundred years.
Yeah, like 250 years. Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
I think that's where like when you kind of do the whole, oh, there's something afoot here.
Mhm.
You know, like 250 years, if you were the center of banking or you were at the very least responsible for handling the money, because let's face it, the
'Cause you
great works, a lot of those are going to require a lot of money.
Yeah, and you'd think there'd be like, for lack of a better term, like, your oh,
It'll come to you.
I know, the bank trucks.
Yep,
Oh,
armored
yep.
cars.
Yeah, the
cars.
armored
Yep.
car delivery or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like in and out on a constant basis. But
Yeah, so the fact that like,
that's why I say, I want to see somewhere else
oh,
on the
I do as
planet.
well.
Like, is there a spaceport that accepts and receives and then delivers, or
Certainly and there's more to it later on, but like this great barrier,
yeah,
not much of a barrier if you can fly right through it. So, is it just like, and I made a joke about like Paradise Island or Themyscira, like,
Yeah,
oh,
is
it's
it
just the illusionary thing that people,
cloaking
you can't
mechanism?
see it. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
giant cloaking device.
But like kids that are
Brinks,
educated
sorry.
like in matters that only pertain to the planet, like
Yeah.
you get the sense, even Luke, who's a farm boy, has a galactic, for lack of a better term, worldview,
Curiosity, at least.
Mhm.
right? I mean, he's aware of an empire. He's aware of politics in the galaxy at large.
Yeah.
These kids are like educated, like planet specific. It's indicated that there's, they don't hide the fact that there's things going
It's
on.
just suggested though that like, like these are middle school kids, so we're talking like 12,
Yeah.
12-ish.
Yeah.
Everybody's being funneled towards a career in finance.
Yeah.
Like, that's
'Cause
crazy.
That felt like a homeroom rather than like a math class.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe.
You
Maybe.
know, like
Yeah. Small, very small numbers.
It would be interesting to see like their full day layout. Like, okay, today you're going to accounting first period and statistics and analyst in second period.
Right.
like
But,
what is a history course? I mean, it opens up a ton of questions. Like
Yeah, like are they learning about
galactic
space
history.
or hyperspace routes like we saw in the school where Grief Karga set it up?
The
Yeah,
Hidean
yeah.
way.
It's interesting that like I want to tie it back to sort of some of the Jedi stuff. I know they're just storybooks, but at the same time, the Empire went to great lengths to erase the Jedi from sort of
History.
the collective consciousness. So that's part and parcel why I'm like, oh my God, like Jedi knowledge, it's free and open knowledge to anybody who wants it, even children.
Right.
Like I'd like to know more about the mystery of like, does nobody, it's like Camino. How do you lose a planet?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at it.
They're going to say something in the second episode that kind of reinforces that, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Brogu says the girl boss teenager got on my nerves. They just had to make her smarter than all the other kids. Here it is. Wim found the spaceship, but she tricks him and Neil into digging it up. Really? Yeah, she's
But
kind of.
there's always a character that's a little bit, smarter than the group. These groups work with the when they have a stereotypical dynamic. That's why the X-Men works. That's why the Fantastic Four works. You build off tropes, and you could switch it up. She's a girl instead of a boy, but
Yeah.
like or whatever the case is. But it's that there's that. You go back and watch Goonies and look at the dynamic.
Yeah.
What we don't have here, which I'm surprised at, is a mouth character, and maybe in this sort of ultra PC sort of, we're not allowed to be crass
Right.
and rude.
Right.
Maybe they've just stepped away from that.
Oh,
But
maybe.
that's sort of the only character that's missing. Like we have a Data, we have a Michael. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mikey, Wim is Mikey for sure.
For
Mhm.
sure.
And I've sort of equated Neil to Chunk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
The
and so-
girl is basically the Josh Brolin character.
yes. Yeah, I was going to say the older
So,
brother.
Yeah, and I mean that's one thing that the show makes a point of showing us, and I find it interesting that we didn't see more of it. But like, there's this interesting contrast on a family dynamic. You've got Wim who's single father.
Mhm.
There's no mom, and then you've got Neil who's got
Full
the
family unit.
homogenous.
Full
Yeah,
nuclear
exactly.
unit. Yeah.
What's funny is that we don't get any context for KB, which I feel is like, oh, like We spent time like to understand that Neil comes from a single parent family. He's lost his mom.
Yeah.
We know a whole lot more about him just from that. We know a whole lot about Neil, mom and dad, and 3 siblings. We don't get anything. And then we know, like with Fern, Farah being her mom, she comes from a privileged, and she's just acting out, trying to be tough. But we get nothing on KB, and I felt that's kind of a missed opportunity, to be honest.
It's likely coming unless they have like there's a written purpose for it.
I hope so. So here we go. Let's move on to
Well,
the next
I
one. Oh, go
mean,
ahead.
we didn't find the Goonies parents, all of them, until the end of the movie,
No,
right?
that's true.
Like,
That's
and
true.
then you kind of see their family dynamics there. But
Yeah,
I-
you get their level of
Like-
strife realistically through
No, you're right. You're
how
right.
they're talking. Like,
I just thought if we're gonna do the whole like we're gonna talk like we're gonna make a point to show this stuff at the beginning, you did it for 3 of the 4 characters,
yeah,
and that's just like, wait a minute.
but at the same time, maybe that's saying something about her family. Like
Yeah,
maybe there's something going on there.
Absolutely, Brogu. She is incredibly smart. I'm gonna
yeah,
talk
she's
a little
tech.
bit about that.
She's the tech character.
She's absolutely the tech. She's our
Data.
Lobot.
And kind of the way
Data
kind of the way Fern is like always making up threatening stories. Like she's a bit of a bullshit artist.
Yeah.
I think she's more of a combination
Of mouth and
Yes.
right, yeah, right.
but at the same time, I don't think we should discount the age gap, right? Like, oh look, pretty girl said I couldn't do it. I got to prove her wrong.
Oh, that's I mean
Like
exactly.
that's built into youth and
Yeah, of
Paul
course.
It
Harding
is,
there, right?
it is, yeah,
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 yeah.
There's a healthy competition going on there. For
Yeah.
sure.
After class, Wim and Neil leave the school. And Neil is kind of flabbergasted that Wim didn't know that the career assessment test is tomorrow. And he asks, why do you think everybody's studying all the time? In fairness, Wim replies, I don't know. Aren't we always studying all the time? Neil is worried that Wim is going to fail, and he suggests that he could intentionally fail too so that they would stay in the same class. What a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
Wim says he's not going to fail. Neil admits that he'd hate to be held back because if he was, he wouldn't be in the same class with Runa anymore. And he likes her. Wim points out that you've never even spoke to her before. But Neil says, I'm working up to it.
Yep.
Neil rolls his eyes as he says that, I can't believe you told the class you wanted to be a Jedi. Defensively, Wim shoots back, what? No, I didn't. But as Neil puts it, you basically did. Wim doesn't care if that's what the other kids think, and he asks, don't you ever want to do something exciting? And then we get that line from the marketing where Neil cocks his head to the one side, and he's like what? From there, we cut to the 2 girls from the hoverbike racing off the school grounds on their hoverbike. One of the safety droids shouts at them as they rocket past and into traffic. Ducking through the underground tunnel, they weave dangerously in and out of traffic, nearly getting crushed between 2 tram buses. The white-haired girl, KB, kneeling on the sidecar, shouts to the brunette pilot, Fern, to be careful. Then the bike flies up a ramp back onto the surface streets. Fern looks at KB with a huge grin as she asks, wasn't that great? But then the bike lurches forward and begins sputtering as thick gray smoke bilges out the back end before slowly drifting to a complete stop. As cars zip past, Fern shuts the bike off and in a much lower tone says, I guess we're walking. Brogu says when they were talking about the test, I loved it when Neil said, I think I did good. Now back on their own street, in their own neighborhood, Wim and Neil walk home, Hank, kicking a can. And that's all I can think of.
Oh, that's wicked. It's wicked.
Kicking a can. Before entering his house, Neil tells Wim not to stay up all night studying and then runs inside where his mom and dad and his siblings meet him at the door. Wim watches through the windows and you can tell it's kind of painful for him to watch that. The scene is sharply contrasted when Wim arrives home to an empty house. His father, having already told him that he would be working late, is not there, and there's no mention of his mother. So, dropping his backpack at the door, Wim flops face first onto the couch. We cut to the garage at KB's house. The sun is beginning to set. Inside, KB works on the broken hover bike while Fern leans against a workbench, gazing off distractedly. KB pulls off a power converter and then, flipping up her visor, tells Fern it's no good. We'll have to get another one. Fern says the scrapyard has been pretty well picked over. But then a hover bike with 3 other teenagers pulls up outside. The human male rider calls the girls wastoids, and he says he heard they had some trouble with their bike. Continuing, he says, well, that's what happens with baby toys. They're easy to break. Fern says, we can still race. But the boy says, really? Be there this weekend if your mommy lets you. Then he revs the hover bike and speeds off, calling the girls losers. KB says to Fern, I think we should postpone, but Fern won't have it. She says, you have to act tough to deal with jerks like that.
It's kind of like a non-union Timothy Chalamet.
KB, being a good friend, says, who cares about racing Bonch Falfa? Facing her, Fern says, I do. What else fun is there to do on this planet? Tossing KB the broken power converter, Fern rushes off with a see you tomorrow, and she adds, keep your eyes out for a new one.
So, that could be KB's home life right there.
What, in the garage?
Like, yeah.
Maybe. In like the Borg sense?
Well, I mean, I don't know, but maybe she's independent.
Oh, that's possible as well. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is an interesting one. Thanks to StarWars.com and the episode guides from this week, we learn a little thing about this character. Bonch Falfa is played by Shane Almagor. Now, Shane has 13 acting credits, nothing of which I could tell you. I've not seen anything that he's been in, so I didn't put anything down. But Bonch Falfa is straight up. He is straight up a nod to Harrison Ford's hot rodder character, Bob Falfa, from American Graffiti.
Nice.
Cut to Fern running down a sidewalk into an upscale gated community. She tears her bomber jacket off and she flips it around, and turns out it's actually her school jacket that she's been wearing inside out with all of her racing regalia stitched to the inside.
A little Fresh Prince.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Inside the house, she's met by the maid droid, who I'm calling Rosie. And the droid, Fern shoves some knee pads and elbow pads into the droid's hands, and she orders it to hide them. And if my mother should ask, I was upstairs studying in my room. The droid matter-of-factly says, no, you weren't. So Fern issues a voice override command to tell the droid that, yes, she was. You just didn't see me. The droid pivots on its central roller and it goes off to hide the pads while Fern dashes up a spiral staircase. But her mom stops her midway and Fern is forced to come back. Turns out Fern's mom is Undersecretary Farah, and she asks Fern if she has anything to say to her. Farah steps closer, producing a badge from behind her back, and smiles at her daughter. She says, you got your spot back. And the badge is a kind of achievement patch that notes head of the class. Fern smiles as she takes it, and she asks her mom, why do you have this? Oh, Farah says that she had to go to her school today, but then her gaze hardens, and she cautions Fern not to slip again, and she worries there isn't a place for everyone at the top. And it's not clear if Farah is referring to top of the class or society. But given the two of them seem intrinsically linked, it works either way. Fern then stomps off to her room with an indignant, I know. Clearly, Farah has put a lot of pressure on Fern, probably because I think Farah wants Fern to be more than what she is. And that's
or at the
fair.
very least, another high-level authoritarian
Well,
figure on the planet.
Listen,
right?
yeah, because look at her introduction in the class. She's like, my busy schedule. Like, okay, you're bullshitting. And then you're an undersecretary, so you're a low-level functionary who wants to act like you're something bigger, and you're pushing your daughter to be like that, to be more than you are. That's what I think, anyway. Absolutely. Brogu says he definitely gives off the Harrison Ford American Graffiti vibe. Totally. In a budget Timothy Chalamet kind of way. Timothy Chalamet, ordered from Wish. All right, now dressed for bed, Wim sits at a table in his bedroom studying for his career test in the morning. His father comes in and is surprised to see him studying there. And wanting to impress his dad, Wim says, "Ask me one." Well, Wim's father says, "What's the basic table of 5?" Wim answers incorrectly, and his dad says, "Close, you'll get it eventually." Now, Wendell rolls Wim on the chair over to his bed, and the boy hops onto it. Nervous about the test in the morning, he says he doesn't think he can sleep, and he asks his father to read him a story like Mom used to. Wendell shakes his head. No, and he apologizes because even though he's now home from work, he still has more work to do. Wendell pauses at the door before shutting off the lights, and he chuckles a little bit about bedtime stories, which is almost, well, no, it's not almost. That's kind of insulting.
Mm-hmm.
He says to Wim, "Aren't you getting a little bit old for that?" And then with an "I love you," he flicks off the light and he walks away, leaving Wim laying there in the bed. And Wim pauses, and you can see he's kind of crushed. "I love you too." Wim pulls up the covers and stares up at a mobile of homemade starships hanging over his bed. Restless, Wim rolls over and he pulls out the story pad from under his pillow and he flicks it on. Flipping through the pages, it's another story about Jedi, and Wim smiles at the image of a Jedi facing off against a huge monster. Looking towards the window, the camera pulls back to a wide shot outside the house and then pans upward into the night sky, where we see a green nebulous clouds swirling behind a perfectly symmetrical grid of red lights. What do we got here? You can see the girl boss teenager comes from a well-to-do family in a somewhat gated community at the top of the hill. Absolutely. I'm sure she gets that. You have to be number one from her mom. I believe that she does.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's check in on Wim's story pad once again, because we get a new story this time. Page 1, it says, oh, what do you go? I went too fast. Went too far. Here we go. The first page says, Druin packed his bag with everything that he might need and set off on his adventure. The Hadaka forest was beautiful, with tall trees and bright, colorful flowers. Druin felt the force flowing through everything around him. First, Druin came across the ruined hut of a woodchopper. The place had been abandoned, the axe left behind, cleft into the stump of an old tree. The vines of the forest had grown back and overwhelmed everything. Next, Druin came across the paddock of a herder who was long gone, run off into the forest or eaten by the beast. But from their old food trough grew a strange, beautiful flower. Finally, Druin felt a strong presence in the force. He knew he was getting close to the fearsome beast. He took out his lightsaber and held it ready as the beast lunged out of the forest and loomed over him. And I have to admit, when I saw that image, I'm like, oh, so they know about Luke Skywalker in the Rancor pit.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, this is reference material.
Mm-hmm.
After I started translating, I was like, oh, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then I thought, no, and a lot of what I thought was based on the second episode in the credits, but we'll get there. A lot of that stuff sort of informed my opinion on what At-Atin was and where these Jedi tales may be sort of originating or set from.
It just makes sense, like we have our superhero tales, and the Jedi are the living superheroes of that era.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Of course you would write stories about them.
No, absolutely. And like I think it was the Return of the Jedi novel. You remember that the Rancor was something like that they told children about to scare the crap out of them?
Yeah, that's
I
right.
believe that's where that was sourced. And so that makes sense that, and the Jedi fighting, a beast. There's kaiju everywhere in this galaxy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're absolutely right. Okay, so we cut to the next day where Neil is pressed against the back window of the bus as he screams, "No!" Meanwhile, Wim, running as fast as his feet can carry him, yells at the bus, "Stop! I slipped in!" As the vehicle pulls further away from him, he shouts to Neil, "I'm going to take a shortcut!" A what? Yeah. A shortcut! Rushing home, Wim grabs his hover bike from the garage and he races to that short dead-end street where he saw Fern and KB go into the forest. But instead of jumping the barrier, he stops, lifts the bike up, throws it over the barrier where it
Awesome.
lands. Sounds like a bike. Clink, clink, clink.
Mm-hmm.
Hopping back into the saddle, he barrels off through the woods, dodging branches and other obstacles.
This was the so ET. This is the part that felt very ET to me.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, Neil, along with several other students, are gathered in a large auditorium at the school where droids are about to proctor this career test. With Wim's seat still empty, Neil tries to stall the droids, but it's no use.
It's a really funny line that he has too. Like he's
Oh,
a
about-
good little actor, actually.
What if someone was busy because they slept in and they're now taking a shortcut?
And now they're taking a shortcut.
Sit down,
Completely
student.
telling the truth.
Absolutely. Cut back to Wim, who now breaks through the forest, spotting the tower from the downtown, the AT-AT in downtown. He points his hover bike at it and he races forward. But suddenly he comes up on a ravine and has to skid the bike sideways in order to stop. But in the process, he ends up getting thrown from the saddle, rolling down the steep embankment into the bottom of the ravine. Collecting himself at the bottom, he tries to navigate his way out, but it's nothing but wilderness as far as he can see in both directions. Now, Wim grabs hold of some grass and some roots as he tries to climb up the embankment, but the roots end up snapping and he slides back down. But in the process of the fall, he loosens some dirt, revealing a hatch that looks like it's dug into the side of the embankment. Curious as to what it is, Wim kneels down in front of the hatch and he begins to clear more of the dirt away from it. Suddenly, a safety droid appears on the far side of the ravine, barking at him. "You are in violation of school's attendance protocol," and it demands the droid, "Come with me." Okay. Oh! Oh, absolutely. Neil is a great friend. He cares about Wim, and from what I can tell, has always tried to steer Wim in the right direction.
That's what I mean
Absolutely,
about
yeah.
everybody playing their role. Like whenever you get one of these scenarios, you always need a moral compass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely right. All right, we cut to somewhere in the school. Sitting outside the proctor's office, Wim is guarded by the safety droid, and he asks, "How much longer?" As he flips through his story pad looking at images of a Jedi temple, Fern ends up sitting down 2 chairs over from him. Her school jacket is flipped inside out again, showing off all of her racing patches. She asks Wim, "What are you in for?" And he tells her, "Oh, I missed my test." And then Wim says to Fern, "What are you in for?" She says, "I race speeders and the droids hate me." Wim says he saw her bike and he says, "It's totally wizard."
I got a
Totally
little
wizard.
mild Ferris Bueller vibes here when Emilio Estevez meets Ferris's sister.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So I got, you know what I mean?
in the police station.
In the police station? Yeah. What are you in for?
Nodding her head, Fern smirks to herself before launching into a tale about how the last kid that missed their exam was taken underground and forced to work in the mines beneath the school. Wim furrows his brow as he says, "Mines?" Even he knows how made up the story is. But then the proctor's door slides open and Wim jumps up to address him, but is instead met by his father.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wendell.
Wendell.
$1 for every time that happened.
Oh, damn. Wendell is furious that he got pulled from a review at work because Wim skipped a test. Wim tries to say, "I didn't skip," but Wendell isn't listening to him. Seeing his son's disheveled look, he says, "What happened to your clothes?" Wim can't even get a word in before Wendell tells him how this is completely unacceptable. But Wim says it doesn't matter because he found something buried in the woods. Then holding up his story pad, he thinks he found a lost Jedi temple. Meanwhile, Fern watches and listens quietly. Wendell says that he was able to convince the proctor to allow Wim to take the test tomorrow, but now it comes with a 50-point penalty, and that means Wim must answer every question correctly in order to pass. Ugh. He tells him to can it with the Jedi Temple nonsense and to go home and study. He'll personally drop Wim off in the morning, and he expects him to pass, adding, "Do you understand?" Wim offers, "Yes, sir." Then Wendell, like the good drone he is, shuffles back to his dead-end job in the great work. Wim shuffles off in the opposite direction, but Fern pipes up and she questions him about finding a Jedi temple in the woods. Wim looks back at her awkwardly before saying, No, I was lying. I better go home like my dad said," and then beats a hasty retreat while Fern eyes him suspiciously. All right, and last time, I think it's the last time this episode, we'll check in on the story pad, and we've got 3 pages. Page 1: the knights decided to build a temple fortress. Using the Force, they lifted and shaped the rocks around them, creating the soaring towers of their new home. They meditated together, their connection to the Force and to each other growing stronger. They were a beacon of light in the darkness, and when the galaxy called for heroes, the valiant order did not hesitate. Their fortress rose back up to the surface, and they stood ready to fight for justice and peace. That's a cool story.
Mm.
All right, cut to Neil's house, where his siblings are all gathered around a coffee table watching a holographic circus dance troupe. Wim gets his younger sister Toulou's attention. He says, "Where's Neil?" And Toulouse just points straight up. Doesn't even look. Just stares at him and points up. Then we cut to Wim, who's climbing the exterior of Neil's house until he's now staring down at Neil through a skylight. Neil now sitting in a bubble bath. Startled at the knock on the window, he says, "What happened? What happened that you missed the whole test?" Still glued to the skylight, Wim says, "Does your dad still have all those tools?" Before we get to the garage for the tools, we have to talk about this because did anybody... I mean, I picked it out immediately. There was no question of what we were looking at. What did you think of the inclusion of this in the show?
Bold choice.
I thought it was awesome. Like, if you're going to canonize a silly, like, we had heard that there was going to be something like this, and we were joking, like, are they going to CGI B. Arthur? Or this is a neat little way to show, like, that at least that little snippet of it is something. It's in galaxy. It doesn't canonize the whole thing. Like, it's just that this is this is in galaxy. This is something that people would watch or you'd put on for babies or whatever. It's
well, the context is the same. Like in the holiday special, this was put on. Lumpy put this on. It was to entertain the kids,
right?
And here it is being used in a very similar fashion to entertain children.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem.
It's Yo Gabba
Gabba. Of course, the circus dance troupe that we're talking about is obviously an homage to the 1978 holiday special, but it's not just any homage.
No.
Thank you to the series co-creators for having this interview with StarWars.com. We know that this is the same dance performance from the holiday special. However, there's a bit of a twist. In the original, they actually wanted to use the original hologram footage, but because the angles didn't match up, they couldn't use it. So everything had to be recreated. The costumes were made from scratch that ended up using archival material that they found at the ranch. The show's stunt coordinator, Colin Fallenweeder, who was in Cirque du Soleil for a bunch of years, had to recreate all the dance choreography, and he played the part of the green ringleader himself.
That's awesome.
And because there was no written record of the original music, and there was no copy good enough or long enough to use, they also had to recreate the original music. John Watts says that including this sequence in Skeleton Crew was a bit of a passion project for him and co-creator Chris Ford. And he was worried that they were going to get a call saying, "You can't do this." And he said that they were surprised that everybody was on board for it.
No, it's awesome.
I think so as well. I saw some comments this week that's like, "Oh, holiday specials canon now." Okay, well, parts of it are now.
Yeah, this one episode of that children's show is.
If we come back to the kids and they're watching Gormunda cooking something,
Whip,
This
whip,
show's
stir, whip.
boring.
All right. So, armed with an array of tools, the boys. Sorry, what did we do here? Sorry, cut to the inside. Nope. Yeah, cut to the outside of Neil's house. The two boys roll up a door to what I believe is a shed. Neil asks Wim if he's found a real Jedi temple. If they found a real Jedi temple, should they not tell the supervisor or their parents? And that begs the question. Now, we've heard supervisor used like 3 different ways now.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor sounds to me like it refers to more than just like a functionary. Like maybe this is the planetary governor as well.
I would think so, yeah.
Like there's the nicest underpinnings of dystopia.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're like, you almost can't argue with that much order, but you know there's something wrong with it.
Yep.
I mean,
I love the image in the background on the wall that's like, you know, nice noodles Jesus or something, like whatever's going on there is awesome to me. It's like a sunshine girl, but that species.
Yeah.
Do we have a species name? Like, have they told us what the new species is?
If they have, I didn't find a reference for it.
But all they've said is it's unequivocally not
an Ortolan.
Not an Ortolan.
No. So yeah, he questions, why do we have to dig it up? Wim sighs before telling him, because this could be a real adventure. Our episode title for this week. And no more pretend. Neil is upset that Wim didn't even ask how the assessment went. So on the spot, he says, he says, how did it go? And immediately, Neil perks up as he says, I did good. And with that out of the way, Wim gathers some tools and he beckons Neil to come along and get going. Now, Neil makes Wim promise that they won't get in trouble, and he does. If only they knew. Armed with an array of tools, the boys head out into the ravine to excavate this Jedi temple. And I think this is hilarious because I think I've done this at some point in my life, using an extension cord for a rope.
Yeah.
The boys try to belay down the embankment, but end up falling into the ravine. Dusting themselves off, they notice the metal hatch has now been cleared of more debris than when Wim was here earlier. Suddenly, an electronically modulated voice calls out, telling the boys that they are in violation of protocol, and then asks them who they have a crush on at school. Neil can't help himself, and he immediately blurts out, Runa! Then KB steps out from behind a large rock, followed by Fern. KB apologizes, and she says Fern made her do it. You know, I feel like, and I see trappings of myself in some of the kids' mannerisms, but like, you know, like some kids are just natural followers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's sort of what KB is. What do we got here? Brogu says, what I want to know is how those girls knew where the spaceship was at. Wim didn't tell them location. All of a sudden they pop up behind the bushes. Where the heck did they come from?
Yeah, but at the same time, we know that she takes this route to school.
That's true.
Constantly.
That's
That's
true.
her shortcut. He's
so
already
all she has,
right. Yeah.
all she has to look for is the spot where he went down.
Yeah, and I mean, did he give enough? Maybe he didn't give enough detail in the moment to.
He had already cleared the little, like when he slipped and cleared the partial thing. So it would take nothing for her to, you know, assumingly her hover bike is better and she makes the jump into the valley.
Well, yeah, because the bike is in the ravine with them.
Either
right,
that
and
or
the
she just rides
ravine
it down, right?
heads right, like at the head of the ravine is the city, right? So it's like that's the path there. So
KB steps out from behind a large rock, followed by Fern, and KB apologizes, saying that Fern made her do it. There's a moment of recognition between Fern and Wim, and it's kind of awkward as there's a bit of a territorial peeing match over who owns the claim.
wicked.
And in the end, it basically boils down to schoolyard style finders keepers, and it is determined that the girls own the claim. But Fern takes it even further, and in the course of the conversation, she manages to trick the boys, who are more than eager to get inside the thing, into digging out the rest of it for them. But it's on the condition that once they do, the boys will be allowed to look inside, and so agreeing to those terms, they end up shaking on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the only woods and valley in the whole town?
Again, that's why I want to see more of this planet, right?
Yeah, no, I hear
Are
ya.
we in a bubble at this point, or
I mean,
is the whole planet the
Farrah
bubble?
talks about Ad-Atten, and then is Ad-Atten a city? Is it a planet? Because the school says Ad-Atten Middle School on the building.
Mm.
So, like, is Ad-Atten just a city? Like, maybe there is Ad-Atten City.
Could be.
You know, we've had that before in Star Wars, where like the capital city is named after the planet.
Yeah.
All right. So later on, Wendell arrives home and it's after dark, and he pulls the car into the open garage. Get a little spark off the whatever
Like
you call the
he,
rod that.
Like
bottoms out.
tram stick. It
Yeah,
reminds me.
yeah.
Remember when the RC cars when we were kids on
Absolutely.
put the little thing in the track and
Little
pull the
slot
trigger?
car. Yeah. They're all slot cars. And he calls out for Wim, but that Wim has left the garage door open. But when Wim doesn't answer, Wendell sets his work stuff down and he goes to the staircase. We then cut back to the hatch, where the boys are hatching a plan of their own to call claimsies once again once they're inside, because, as Wim puts it, their claim only applies to the outside and girls are dumb. Well, then the camera pulls back over KB and Fern's shoulder as they sit there watching the boys dig, and Fern is like, "Those boys are so dumb."
It's
Cape-
kinda
I'm
awesome.
thinking they got the other one the best of them.
KB says, "You didn't have to be so mean. They did find it after all." KB asks Fern, "What do you think it is?" Fern has no idea, but she's betting that there's a power converter inside. Well, slipping on some loose grass, Wim ends up exposing a panel beside the hatch. Well, KB spots the panel and she gets up and goes to inspect it. Flipping her visor down, she pulls the cover off the panel, revealing like a circuit board underneath. Now, everyone watches as KB uses a cable and she connects one end into her cybernetic enhancement and then the other end into the circuit board.
Echo vibes.
There's a puff of dust as the hatch creaks open and the kids all jump back. But then everyone gathers around the opening and uses their flashlights to look inside. There's several old crates and boxes strewn about inside the cave, and several plant roots shroud the inside of the hatch. Wim calls out, "Hello?" But the only answer comes from a rat that scurries past. Off in the distance, a voice calls out, and even though the kids can't identify the voice, it's clearly Wendell who's looking for Wim. The kids, not wanting to be caught, douse their lights and they grab their bags before climbing through the open hatch, then poking their heads back out as they listen for the approaching voice.
I think the triangles of light off the flashlights in the dusty atmosphere might be the most 80s thing about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Brogu says, the little car that the father was driving with the little stick in the groove of the track reminds me of Finn and the other people in Star Wars movie flying those things toward the Empire. Oh, yeah, on the salt flats.
Crate.
That's right.
On the salt flats, yeah. I dig it.
They're like hydrofoils.
Yeah, they were. They were. Cut to Wim's helmet that's resting on the forest floor from when it was knocked off his head earlier in the episode. Wendell recognizes it as his son's, and he calls for Wim even louder now that he thinks he's on the right path. Well, back at the claim, the kids can now clearly hear that it is Wim's father. Fern, oh my God. Fern basically says to the group that Wim's father told him to can the Jedi Temple nonsense, and now he came out here anyway, and that he's going to be in a lot of trouble. Wim shoots, "I won't be," when he sees that I'm right, and then Wim barges off with Neil close behind. The girls share a look before they're both startled at Wim shouting, "Ah, skeleton!" And when they catch up, they find Wim shining his flashlight on a lifeless droid. And the droid has one eye, and it's one eye missing, and it's holding on to a lever. Fern clasps Wim by the shoulder, and she shouts at him, "Don't touch it!" As the two of them argue over whether or not he was going to pull on it, Neil thinks he can see something inside the droid's eye socket. And leaning in, Neil is startled when a rat-like creature jumps out from the droid's eye. The jostling causes the droid's limp arm to pull the lever anyway, and subsequently that hatch into the ravine snaps shut. KB tries pumping the lever a few times, but the hatch doesn't open, and the console that's the lever is attached to begins to glow red. The kids all run for the hatch, and they try banging against it and prying it open, but it won't budge. KB deduces that without power, it won't open. But she traces her flashlight along a power conduit, and she figures it could lead them to a power source. Later on, as the kids trace the conduit, Wim supposes, well, there has to be another way out because Jedi temples have all sorts of secret passageways. Wim thinks the whole thing is exciting because they're exploring. Fern doesn't share that optimism. Wim asks her, did you know that some Jedi temples could bury themselves in times of danger? But Fern is short with him, and she says all they have to do is find the power before they run out of air. In the course of their banter, they somehow end up losing KB. But then KB pops up from a hatch in the floor, and she tells him the conduit goes down here. Wim counters, no, we need to go up. But Fern and Neil both follow KB. Wim questions Neil, you're following the girls? And Neil says, I just want to go home. Defiantly, Wim takes his own path, and he says, I don't need you. Then he shouts, this is great! My own Jedi temple! Rounding a corner, Wim is startled at a light and a face staring back at him. But he quickly realizes it's just his own reflection in some glass. Staring at himself, he says, grow up, you grow up. Having traced the conduit back to its source, KB and Fern find a jet engine-looking generator thing. Neil, whose feet and legs are dangling through the hatch in the ceiling, is stuck there. KB says this has to be it, and it's in some kind of hibernation mode. Fern tells her, well, wake it up. So, using a piece of broken conduit, she smacks the generator as some lights flicker on for a moment before winking off again. So she smacks it a second time, but only harder. Then all throughout the cavern, panels begin to light up, most of them along the ceiling, and it's not long before it's apparent that the cavern is a starship, and that starship is inverted. The reflection that Wim saw of himself was actually in the canopy glass of the cockpit, and standing there, 2 seats lower from the ceiling, a headset with a boom mic flops out of one, and Wim puts it on.
I got the Flight of the Navigator vibes when everything was lighting up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Taking the walkie-talkie off his belt, he calls out to Neil to let him know that he's found something amazing, and don't tell the girls! Jedi 2, this is Jedi 1.
Their codes are wicked. It's so wicked.
Fern, having heard everything, grabs the other walkie off of Neil's belt, and she barks at him, whatever it is, don't touch it.
The recurring theme.
Yeah. Wim says, I was wrong. It's not a Jedi temple. It's something better. Fern repeats herself, don't touch anything. With the power up, they can all get to the hatch and go home. But Wim can't help himself. Spotting a flashing green button on the armrest of the upside-down pilot seats, Wim is drawn to it like a moth to the flame. A moment later, everything begins shaking. Everyone runs for the hatch. As they pass the dead droid, KB flips the lever that should open the hatch, and the panel goes green. But none of them notice as they run past that the droid powers up and it jerks its head to look after them. The hatch slides open just as the kids run up to it, but when they look outside, they're surprised to see that the ravine is falling away from them. Now, in the forest, Wendell comes to a halt, shocked at the sight of a starship tearing its way out of the ground in front of him. The kids all climb out the hatch as dirt and debris fall away from the rising ship. The glow of the engines begin to burn away some of the vegetation. Standing on the hull, Fern finally realizes it's a starship. Wim spots his father on the ground and calls out to him, Dad, Dad! But then the ship starts to right itself and everyone is thrown off balance. They all hurry back through the open hatch, except for Wim, who slips on the hull, but he's caught by the others, and after a while, they do eventually pull him back inside. As soon as Wim is pulled inside the ship, the hatch snaps shut. The engines rotate into flight position, igniting the forest below them, and Wendell watches helpless as the ship rockets off into the night sky. Rushing back to the cockpit, Neil points out the viewport. They realize that they're going to pass through the barrier. Fern shouts that they have to turn around right now. Wim jumps into one of the pilot seats, but the controls are frozen. He thinks maybe it's on autopilot, so Fern orders everyone to find a button that says auto. Then everyone starts pressing random controls with no rhyme or reason in a desperate effort to get the ship back onto manual control. Well, the rumbling stops as the ship crosses through the barrier, and for the first time in their lives, all the kids see stars. But then, suddenly, those same stars begin to slide, and the ship jumps into hyperspace, and the kids all scream like passengers sitting in the front car of a roller coaster as it makes the first drop. Instead, we don't cut to black this week, but rather, in the blank star field, credits begin to roll, and the episode comes to its conclusion. What did we think of that?
Awesome start.
Yeah, that was, yep. I have to admit, and maybe it had a lot to do with my expectations being low.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. And I'm going to try to maintain that level of low expectation throughout.
Sure.
I don't want to go, that was amazing. I can't wait until it's the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I just want to keep an even keel on this one. Arr, an even keel.
The only thing after, like, examining after the fact is the vines in the ship
that they had grown through.
Yeah. So to me, that says the ship is no longer.
See, and I thought it was netting. I thought it was netting like a Mon Calamari sort of.
That's an interesting thought.
That fixes it right for me. But
you know, the descriptive audio does make a point to say like roots that vegetation had grown inside the ship. So I mean,
you could have knocked over a beaker though.
Possibly. It works in the sense that it gives us another clue towards how long has this thing been there?
Right.
Like when the ship is lifting up through the ground, like there are full mature trees that are like toppling.
100%.
It's been there for a long time.
Mind you, another thought.
Yep.
Maybe where they passed through was the galley, and this is just the leftover potatoes that have been growing for years and years and years.
Okay.
And they will do that, right?
No, you're absolutely right.
Arby's. Oh,
Josh, what's a pirate's favorite place to eat?
That's pretty great.
Arby's.
The only thing that I think is missing a little, and maybe maybe adventure is the point.
Yeah.
I just keep thinking of the adventure excitement a Jedi craves, not these things. A 10-year-old doesn't give a frig about that. I get it. Yeah. We didn't care about that.
We can have a real adventure.
Right. But the thing that made Goonies so good was the reason that they were driven to find the treasure in the first place was to save their home. And it's that little piece of the story that brings the separate characters together for a common cause. It's your motivation. It's the thing where they bring you to almost a tragedy at the end where, there's just a marble bag left. It's just enough to pay for everything. We're okay. But so I guess the adventure is just getting home. But it would be nice if there was like a little we need to, a little urgency. We need to get home because. So maybe we'll get something like that. A little heart.
I mean, obviously they're going to want to get home.
Yeah, but 100%.
What's interesting for me,
of them. At least 3 of them.
We've got the A and the B plot now, because the A plot and ostensibly they are related. It's the whole getting home thing, but the A plot is the kids. We now have a B plot now because we have a reason for Wendell and Farah to come together, and all those like weird family dynamics that we talked about. There's an opportunity for that stuff to flip now, like Wendell to become more involved in his son's life, and for Farah to not be so hard on her daughter.
They probably will do a little character development there. I hope they don't spend too much time there because I'd rather focus on the feeling that the kids are so far from home that they're out of touch with what, if it's a bold narrative way to do things, if they jump back to it and give us some perspective,
I do think that the parents now with the kids gone off and Wendell knowing that they're off planet, that that alone, from the adult perspective, I think is going to draw us into the bigger Star Wars world, and we'll get more context for why Ad-Atin is shrouded in this
Right,
like green
right.
nebulous, whatever that barrier stuff is.
Mhm.
But I think it's going to be shocking for the adults as well. I don't think all the adults on Ad-Atin know what the dealio is, right?
Right.
And
I mean,
and I
even the droids. That's next episode.
yeah,
Sorry.
but
Yeah.
like you say there, I think that could be our bag of marbles at the end.
Yeah.
Is they don't know that they're technically prisoners,
Mhm.
Right.
and them going out, discovering the big galaxy, whatever. They come back and say,
Right.
"Hey, there is a life beyond the barrier."
Beyond the barrier. Yeah.
Right.
And you don't have to be an accountant. You don't have to be a statistics analyst. You could go out and do something.
Yeah.
I
That
just
that republic is gone.
I just
Yeah.
want to know like how deep does the mystery go to maintain the illusion of like it's still the Republic and we all are working
I
towards.
still
The
find it
great work,
so
yeah.
strange that these kids are that highly educated but don't know what a star is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that
They've
might
been
be a
I
star.
shielded.
think they're stars. Yeah. Yeah. So that is our first episode. That is a real adventure.
Mhm.
The next episode, Andy, you're going to take us through the next episode, but we're not going to do that tonight because that's just cruel and unusual to do
A
2 episodes at once. So
ton of people stuck with us tonight. I'm so
yeah, thank
proud
you
of
very
guys.
much.
Thanks so much.
If you're enjoying this series, if you're enjoying Skeleton Crew, come back and see us tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about episode 2 tomorrow night.
Way, way out beyond the barrier.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get a lot more. There's definitely some more fun stuff to talk about when that episode comes up. Looking forward to talking about that one. And then, do we know if the show is running on Tuesday nights every
It
week?
is.
It is Tuesday nights.
It is according to the little pop up on Disney Plus. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So come and watch us tomorrow night, and then at 9 in your time zone. Well, no, 6 in Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. You can watch episode 3,
On Tuesday.
and we'll fall back into our regular schedule.
Mhm.
I think this is the only double drop. I don't think there's another one for the season because it's only an 8 episode.
So the one
Excuse
thing I
me,
noticed
geez,
was
an 8 episode series.
that's right. The one thing I noticed that the second episode's roughly half the running time of the first episode.
Yeah, it was kind of
I
short.
think
And I'm
that's
wondering-
the only reason they dropped them together.
Maybe. So I
Because,
was
like,
just
at
wondering,
the
do you
end
think
of
the
this
rest of
one-
the episodes are more like that? Are we going to get like sort of like, animated style half-hour jobbies and
I don't know.
it's hard to tell. Yeah.
I would think that the last few
Thanks,
things that we've
guys.
done, the last couple of live action Star Wars things, our finales have been
They've been over. Yeah.
they've been longer. Oh, thanks, Sarah. Glad we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Thank you so much.
But like at the end of this one, I didn't feel like I needed another one to get me hooked into it. Like,
No.
or you needed all 3 to
No.
get there.
Yes, yeah.
But
They
here,
worked
I
as
don't
that.
think you
Yeah.
did.
And
But-
that's what they did for it. So the fan screener was the first 2 like we got, but the media screener was the first 3.
We got 3. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Maybe
So
the
after
media just
tomorrow,
needs-
we're all on equal footing.
Yeah.
right?
That's good. That sounds great. Well, I'm looking forward to doing that. It is Fandom Power presents Fandom Crew. Everybody's got to have a crew. I've got this amazing crew. I hope you've got your crew. And tomorrow night, we'll get back together and be a bigger crew together.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody got anything you want to close on?
I don't think so.
Super pleasantly surprised. Let's put it that way. Pleasantly surprised.
If you had to pick an MVP for the episode, one character, who is it?
Want to say it all together? Neil.
Neil.
Yeah.
Neil. Yeah.
I think there's an underlying thing with Fern though, because like
Yeah, sure.
as much as she wants to be the rebel and everything, I think she craves the same adventure that Wim does.
I agree with you on that. She's just going about it a different way.
Yes.
I think she's afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's why the tough, gruff exterior.
Right. Exactly.
But at the same time, like, I don't think she wants to be an undersecretary. She wants to be a
no.
racer.
Yeah.
Like-
Well, absolutely.
She's definitely on track to
Absolutely.
become a pod racer or something.
She can't. Anakin's the only human that can do it.
She Anybody can wield the force now. Come on.
Maybe a father eraser.
Father years. Yes. Yeah. All right. Listen, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Again, we'll be back tomorrow night with part 2. Andy and I will be here on Tuesday for Random Fandom 89?
88 or 89.
88 or
I think we're
89.
88.
Yeah. 80 something anyway. But yeah, this is Fandom Crew. Totally looking forward to this. Cannot wait for the next one, but must be patient. Must be patient. Don't get too excited. Don't get too excited. Want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight.
Josh.
All the way back. Joe Fan, Sarah, Brogu, thanks for tuning in, man. Nice chatting with you.
Sub us
Really
up,
enjoyed
man.
that.
Good to have you.
Really enjoyed that. We'll see everybody again tomorrow night and possibly Tuesday, and then for the next 6 weeks as we continue our little journey here on Fandom Crew. Remember, everybody, whatever your thing is, fan on. And for Fandom Power, my name is Wes.
I'm Andy.
And I'm Hank.
And we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now, everybody.